What's up guys, Ruppy here bringing you my Week 7 battle for the SAPL, as my Columbus Swoo look to keep our undefeated ways intact against Liam and the Los Angeles Aggrons, as we have our first rematch for our Ula Ula Division opponents of the season. We're starting to come down to the wire here, folks, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I do believe a win in this game would pretty much make me a lock for playoffs at this point. Doesn't guarantee I'll win the division, because Jarrett is still right on my tail and still actually ahead of me in differential, because the 5-0 I got last week, he got a 5-0 of his own, so yeah, there's that. Regardless, I'm feeling fairly confident about this game. You see my team off to the left, you saw my team build a video on what I had planned for this game. His team's off to the right, and the very first thing I noticed when I looked over this team was the surprising lack of Rhydon. I was almost positive Rhydon was going to come for the simple fact that it was, it's basically the one thing on his entire team that keeps Zapdos from mowing everything down. And the fact that he didn't bring it actually kind of startled me a bit. Because basically at this point, all I really have to do is find an opening to get Zapdos set up, and this is pretty much game. I am going to go ahead and tell you guys in advance, he did tell me after the game he actually brought the wrong team to this game. He had an entirely different team planned for this game, which would explain the lack of Rhydon, but he accidentally brought his team from his game the previous week. Unfortunately, for him at least, this game is still going to count, because had I been informed of this before we actually started playing, I would have been more than happy to forfeit that battle and allowed him to grab the correct team, and as long as we would have gone different leads and I would have been allowed to kind of strategize on the fly, that would have been fine. But by the time he notified me, this game was already done, and considering we were kind of talking in the, not DMing one another in Discord, it was kind of in the actual Discord chat, I don't know if the guys in charge would have allowed us to replay as well. So there is a bit of a black cloud over this game as well. But let's go ahead and get into the battle and just see how things played out regardless. So, for the second time this season, Liam, or Nikki I guess as his in-game character is called, is going to be challenging me to a battle. So I lead off with Laundry Day, same exact scenario as last time, because I feel Laundry Day is probably once again my best lead. This time he leads with Darmanitan, the thing that did not come last time. Thankfully once again I did not bring Mega Beedrill. He goes ahead and U-turns out on me to kind of confirm my suspicions that this thing is Scarf, because, let's be honest, looking at his team, what wouldn't be Scarf? So, he goes into Whimsicott. Knowing this is coming, I just go ahead and straight up Volt Switch out, knowing that I can eat any hit from Darmanitan, and this puts the momentum ultimately into my favor, as I proceed to send Deadeye in for its debut. Look at this thing. It just does, it's not here to play around. In fact, it scares Whimsicott out, as he just goes straight into Salamence, seeing an opening. I just go straight for the Spirit Shackle. I didn't want to take the gamble of setting up a substitute, and end up getting if he stayed in and getting Encore locked into it. That was one of my bigger fears in this game with the Whimsicott lingering around. He straight up goes for a Fire Fang, and also reveals Life Orb to me. So, my assumption of him potentially running a Lumberry to try to compensate for the fact that I could have easily burned him again with Rotom-Wash is off the table. Regardless, Deadeye is able to live with enough health to be able to get a sub off. The best he can do is break it with a Fire Fang. So, there goes my sub. But it does allow me to fire off a free Spirit Shackle again. I was tempted to go for the Haze, but I didn't want to get too overzealous in case he focused more on trying to break my sub as opposed to trying to set up, figuring that Decidueye could not beat this thing one-on-one. What Deadeye is able to do, however, is knock this thing to a low enough range where at this point, I get Deadeye out of here, figuring I still have some use for my Ghost Robin Hood bird thing, and go straight into Laundry Day, which is going to take this Dragon Claw, Not as well as I would have liked, but to be fair, he is Life Orb, and I did take a bit of prior damage beforehand from Darmanitan's U-turn. But Salamancer's going to do itself into Life Orb recoil, as Laundry Day is going to get some health back. This does open the door for Whimsicott to come back in, however, and figuring that he might have some kind of grass move, and the fact that he would outspeed me, I just go ahead and flat switch, and go straight into Archangel, figuring that if he does have a grass move, he's going to go for it. He does proceed to reveal Energy Ball here, which does a decent chunk to Zapdos. And I find out this thing is also Life Orb, which is interesting. As I said, he was using the same exact team from his previous week's game. I actually did not see that game, and I was actually, again, still unaware this was his previous week's team at the time, so this was all new to me when it all happened. Anyway, I HP Ice just in case he wants to stay in with Whimsicott for whatever reason or wants to try switching into something else. Darmanitan's going to come in, and I don't want to play this game. I don't want Zapdos taking too much damage right now. I could have set up there, but I didn't want to rush into it. So I just go into Bomb Track instead, as Darmanitan Flare Blitzes, does a nice chunk, but it's not going to appreciate the combination of Bomb Track's rough skin damage plus the Flare Blitz recoil, which is exactly why it switches out here. He ends up going into Hitmontop as I fire off a Gunk Shot just in case he wanted to switch into Whimsicott, predicting an Earthquake actually. But he gets off the Intimidate as I go ahead and Gunk Shot. So, pretty fair middle ground play on his part. Except for the fact that I get a Poison on his Beyblade. So, a bit of hacks in my favor. There was actually quite a bit of hacks in this game that ended up in my favor, unfortunately. Case in point, the turn that happens next, because I'm going to switch Bomb Track out to preserve it for Darmanitan. I go into Deadeye figuring Hitmontop probably can't touch me. What he ends up doing is trying to Toxic me and ends up missing, which is going to prolong Deadeye's lifespan a little longer as his poor Hitmontop is slowly suffering to the poison damage, which is unfortunate. The static pairs from last week were somewhat controllable because I brought static for a reason. I made the conscious decision to do that. This was not, and it was a bit disheartening. He bullet punches me, showing that he can hurt me, as I just go for a Spirit Shackle to trap Hitmontop in here with me. So, if bullet punch is really all he has to hit me with, then I know for a fact that Deadeye is going to be able to not only, well, basically put the cherry on top of its debut by actually getting a kill in its very first game. So, props to Deadeye on that, as I proceed to just go ahead and fire off a Leaf Blade this turn. He doesn't bullet punch for the extra damage, which was a bit surprising. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because Deadeye would have been able to live the hit. I still would have killed with Leaf Blade. And Liam is kind of falling into a fairly deep hole here right away. He's going to go back into Whimsicott here. And at this point, as much as I would have loved to try and preserve a 6-0, I wanted to see what this Whimsicott wanted to do, and I wanted to safe switch into Zapdos for, to basically just try to go for endgame right here. So I just let Decidueye go down to a crit Moonblast, so in that regard, probably a good thing I didn't switch. And this is where I go into Archangel, and this is where this game really starts going downhill for poor Liam. He goes ahead, fires off the Moonblast, does a pretty fair amount of damage because of that blasted Life Orb. But I'm going to go ahead and get an Agility set up. I figure if he does have the Encore, he would go for it here and I can react accordingly. But if he did have it, he didn't go for it. I'm free to fire off an HP Ice, and that is a dead Whimsicott. So this is the part of the show where Zapdos basically, for the second week in a row, pretty much just controls the game. He's going to send in Empoleon, and wanting to preserve my Zapdos sweep just in case he might have had, say, a Wakan Berry, I decided to just go for a Roost to get Archangel's health back up, figuring that this Empoleon can't touch me too much. I'm kind of proven a bit wrong, as that Skull did a fair amount of damage, which is exactly why I'm going to go ahead and Roost back up a second time. He is going to go ahead and go for another Scald. Again, just trying to get any damage off on my Zapdos. I'm, again, just trying to preserve my Sweeper here. He does end up getting a burn, however, which is a bit unfortunate. But it's at this point that I see where this is going, and I decide, screw it, let's just go straight for endgame. I fire off a Thunderbolt. I see no Wakan Berry on this thing. And that's the end of Empoleon right there. So, next on the docket, as poor Archangel takes even more burn damage, he's going to send out his Darmanitan, which, again, as I said back in week 2, with the speed EVs I was running, with 1 agility, I would still be able to outpace even Scarf Darmanitan. It was EV'd specifically for that purpose. So, his Choice Scarf is useless as another T-Bolt puts Darmanitan down for the count. And at this point, the one and only Mon he has left is, of course, the thing I despise more than anything else in draft format, Manaphy. I find out this is where he was hiding the Wakan Berry as I go for a T-Bolt. So unfortunately, Zapdos is going to be denied its complete sweep. It is going to pick up at least 3 kills, I believe. But it is going to bite the dust to its own Life Orb recoil as he goes for Ice Beam, which doesn't hit anything. And at this point, Mystic is pretty much free to come in and clean up. As I said, this was built specifically to be my Manaphy killer. He ends up going for Surf on this last turn, which isn't going to do enough. And I'm just going to just kind of get a bit ahead of myself here. I'm going to kill this Manaphy with an Energy Ball, and that's going to be game. He could have Tail Glowed had he seen that I would have died to my own Life Orb recoil. That would have been probably a safer play on his part, and he even admitted it after the game. But at the end of the day, that Tail Glow wouldn't have mattered because, one, as I said, the Gardevoir was kind of specifically designed for that Manaphy, and unless he was packing Hydro Pump, or if he had, say, a Life Orb, which neither one was the case, a +3 Tail Glow, barring a crit, or, sorry, a +3 Surf, barring a crit, would not have been able to take out Manaphy, or Gardevoir from full health. I know I'm stumbling over my words a bit, and I apologize for that. Gardevoir would not have been taken out from full health, and I still would have killed regardless. Even if that had been the case, which would have kind of dented my differential a bit, Landorus-Therian could have still come in and destroy the thing with an Earthquake, and that would have been game as well, because I'm pretty sure Manaphy would have died from an Earthquake from that point. Hard to say for sure, but just remembering how much of a 50-50 roll it was the last time I was in that scenario, and Manaphy did have lower health this time around, I think that's a pretty safe assumption to make. Regardless, despite the dark cloud that does end up lingering over this game, once again, my Columbus Swoo are going to prevail over the Los Angeles Aggrons, and we are going to move to 7-0, and I am almost positive that that puts an end to Liam's playoff hopes, unfortunately. The miracle run is not going to happen, and I do believe my Columbus Swoo have in fact secured a playoff spot outright. Whether or not we'll be able to maintain the first seed by being the Ula Ula Division champion remains to be seen or not, but we will see exactly how that plays out in the coming weeks. So thank you guys so very much for watching. I've been Ruppy, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.